All right, hey traders, TG Watkins here. Let's see, hopefully we got everything up and running. Looks like we do on my end. But yeah, sorry, it took me a second. Had to kind of reload my OBS and log in again. But anyway, hope you guys are doing well. Let's see, it's April 5th, a few days out from April Fools. Hope you guys had a good time with that. I did see a few public accounts out there have a good time with April Fools, so it's always interesting to see that. All right, so let's kind of get this thing going. So yeah, again, my name is TG Watkins. If you guys are interested in checking out how I trade or the trading room, anything else like that, you can do a $7 trial for 30 days. Just come on over here to the Moxie Indicator Mastery, and then also check us out at simplertrading.com. All right, so one of the things that I've been looking at today, and actually kind of the beginning of this week, is the UVXY, UVIX. They're both the same thing. One has a little bit more leverage. The UVXY is what I tend to look at just because it's the more original and it's got more history and all that kind of stuff. And so the fact that we're starting to see this thing perk up a little bit tells me that we're probably going to get, well, we are getting some weakness in the market and that we should be aware of that. So one thing that I do want to be looking at here, at least, is that we have a potential double bottom right in through here on the UVXY. Doesn't have to hold, something to be aware of. So what I do like to do is I like to look down at the lower time frames a little bit more. And what we're starting to see is, and I actually mentioned this to the Moxie group, that earlier, or actually late last week, that there was a gap between price and the hourly 50, and I was expecting the market to pull back and the UVXY to pop up, something around there. Well, it's given enough time that you can see here that the 50 has actually come down to price. So now we need to figure out if it's actually going to pop over it, and it's totally possible. Like, remember, we had this big crazy move here from the mini banking financial crisis situation, and you could see that it popped right up over the hourly 50. There was a double bottom there, and again the Moxie price trigger. So we're trying to look at that and say, okay, are we seeing similar things? And the first thing I want to note is that the Moxie indicator is still fairly low. Like, you could see this one was right there and then fired pretty quickly, like right as this move started. This one, it tells me that we still either have a little bit more work to do until this thing actually goes fully bullish, or that maybe we're going to just get a bounce in a downtrend. So if it's, let me start with each one of those. If this is going to be a full setup bullish move to the upside for UVXY, the Moxie traders know this, we'd be looking for basically a 50, 250 situation in through here. And we would be looking for price to engage and start moving up like that along an uptrending hourly 50. We would also need to see the Moxie indicator get much closer to zero. And so far, that's pretty far away. So then the other one that we could be seeing is a bounce and a downtrend, which would make the SPY doing a dip, like a buyable dip. And so what we would see is maybe price move up like this to relieve some of the pressure, and then it would just then start to roll over. So that would be the bounce in a downtrend situation. As far as the 15-minute, yeah, we're starting to see some traction in through here. We can see that price is over the 15-minute 50. The Moxie indicator has been up over zero. So we are seeing indications that this thing is starting to build and try to move, and it's trying to do something. So we have to keep an eye on that and see if that's actually going to be working out that way. And then if we take that and we look at the SPY and see what we're getting, well, that's the weakness that we're talking about. Now the question is, how far is this going to go? How long is this going to be dropping for? How far is it going to go? And that's kind of the thing that I was talking about with the UVXY. Is how long does this go? So if the UVXY decides to just bounce and then continue down, like that bounce in a downtrend, then what we should be seeing is the SPY dip, something around here, hourly 50, maybe just below the hourly 50, find support, and then move up from there. And so that would be a buyable dip for the SPY, and that would be the bounce in a downtrend for the UVXY. Now, if the UVXY sets up bullishly, which is going to be very bearish for the market, then what we would see that do is probably come down here to the hourly 50, maybe try and move up a little bit, but then ultimately continue failing to the downside. So those are kind of the two paths that we see so far. We'll just have to give it a little bit of time. I think as an example, if we look at the SOXX Yeah, this one did a pretty good move to the downside so far. We don't know yet if this is going to be a buy the dip situation, but one thing that I was noticing is we basically had a double top there. We also had a double top here with the UVXY, or sorry, the Moxie on the SOXX. So I was kind of looking at that. I was like, yeah, looks like there's going to be a pullback. And if you look at the 15-minute time frame, right in through here, get that right there. See how price ran right into the underside of a downtrending 15-minute 50, and the Moxie indicator was below zero. So that was the start of the move of the pullback with the SOXX, and then we'll have to see where in the food chain this keeps working its way. Another one that I was looking at the Dow, and through here, just kind of noting some things. These are all pretty high up, and right in through here, you can see that there's still a gap between price and the daily 8 EMA. So this is why I'm kind of looking for a pullback. And we can see that there's still a gap here between price and the hourly 50. So I would imagine that price is going to come back down to the hourly 50 at some point. Now it doesn't necessarily have to do it by going down. It can do it by going sideways and having the 50 move up to it. And that's kind of the challenge. That's always been the thing, is like, okay, well, how is price going to fix the overbought condition? Let me see if I can kind of show you a couple other examples. So here we go. Right here, and this is totally possible. We don't know what we're going to get, but you can see here that price was overbought. And what did it do? It did kind of move down, pulled up, and then dropped down, but it only spent, I don't know, like it just tapped. Basically went there, right there, and then continued back up. And you can see that for the most part, this was really just kind of a flag. So it wasn't even really much of a pullback. And that's one of the things that we need to be aware of. Are we going to get that, or are we going to get a little bit more robust of a drop? So we kind of come over here. Let's see if I can find that. Well, let me zoom out. Lost it. There we go. Okay, so if we can look over here, there was a bit of a bigger drop, and you can see it was right here when it finally fell off of the hourly 21, and then it had a big drop. Now, the challenging thing with the market, of course, is if you're trying to have a stop, or if you're trying to do something like this, the market likes to go every which way before it finally goes where you're thinking it's going to go. So if you look at this, for example, man, that would be probably pretty tough. Opens up in the morning, it jumps up, takes some stops out, and then actually goes the direction that you want it to go. And that's the market. Makes it really difficult to kind of plan for things, but if you can kind of just look at the greater picture and look at the overall target of where you're trying to go, that might end up helping you. So for example, I'm looking for the hourly 50, or just below the hourly 50, something like that. And you can see here again, there was another test of the hourly 50. And that's why when I look at here and I see this, I'm like, well, at some point, price and the hourly 50 are most likely going to run into each other or meet, and that's kind of what we're looking for. You can see right here, price and the hourly 50. And so now the question really is, so it came down to the 21, and what's it going to do until they finally do meet? And that might take another day or two. We never quite know, but that's what I'm looking for, and seeing if price is going to be coming down like that. Claudio, nice. I appreciate the compliments on that. And let's see, B1. Yeah, we had the breadth thrust on Friday. Rare signal. Yes, I heard about that one. It's got a good history of success. We might be due for a pullback, but the breadth thrusts argues it will be just that. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm leaning towards so far. And if you take a look at this, let's see, where is it? Sometimes my computer gets slow when I'm trying to run all these programs. There you go. Let's get that back up there. There was a statistic that just came out talking about when the S&P gains more than 7% in the first quarter, every time it has been higher a year later. So B1, yeah, there are a lot of stats that are coming out and basically saying this. I also did a market update webinar March 1st. So if you guys want to go back, look at our Simpler Trading's YouTube page, look for March 1st, and you'll see my bull bear market update. And I showed a lot of statistics like this too that say, hey, you have this metric, And now that the market has completed it, this is typically what happens. They're not always perfect. This one is technically perfect, but is it going to be different this year? Well, we'll have to wait and see. That also doesn't mean that the path is going to be easy. We have been seeing that this market really is still very, very challenging as far as how things move. I'm just kind of looking at like one of the names. I think it was ACCD. You know, not the easiest thing. You kind of look at something like this, and sure, yeah, it is trending higher. But look at some of the moves in through here. Yeah, those are some really big drops. You'd have to have either a fairly wide stop or you're day trading this kind of stuff. It makes it quite challenging. And some of the other names, we've been talking about ARC. Now, I do think that names like this, they sure look like they are done going down, but they aren't necessarily going up. And so B1, that's kind of the thing is that we're not really seeing great participation. We're not seeing great breadth from the market. Yes, there are a fair number of names that are going up. A lot of names are done going down, it looks like, but there's just not a whole lot of, bullish energy out there that is really taking a majority of names in some direction. So you can see here that I think that ARC, for example, is pretty much done going down. We can see something like this. There's an inverse head and shoulders, but that is a lot of noise right in there, and that is a weekly chart. That is many weeks that this thing has just kind of been chopping sideways. If we were going to be optimistic, if we wanted to say, okay, bullish, well, then this is a bull flag or basing until it finally starts to move up and does something. But in the meantime, it's a little bit challenging to do anything with it because honestly, it's not really doing much. And this is part of the problem of some of the names that I'm seeing out there is that they're doing the patterns. We have a 50, 200, 50 maneuver right here. And then we even have a potential trampoline move. And I have to say potential because it hasn't confirmed yet. And remember, a trampoline move is a bullish setup when price is below the 50, but the Moxie indicator is above 0. And what that is that tells us that energy and momentum via the Moxie indicator are still positive. And then when price is below the moving average, that tells us that it's not where it's supposed to be. It shouldn't be down there. So if that kind of tells it's like a beach ball trying to get pushed underneath water. And eventually, when that beach ball is released and that pressure comes up, that's why I call it like a trampoline move, because you are jumping onto that trampoline and it shoots you up like that. But we have to wait for it to actually confirm. And so far, it just hasn't gotten any traction. So, maybe it's kind of waiting for something and it's building, building, building. Obviously, the market right now, the rest of the market's kind of weak and pulling back. But something like this, we're just kind of like, okay, like, when's this thing going to go? And is it? And this is kind of the stuff that we're looking at. Names like Perch, they're just kind of bumping around off the bottom. Maybe this is going to be a really nice double bottom at some point, but you can see the big moves to the downside. Some of the other ones I've been looking at, Toast. Let me come over here to higher time frames. And you can see this thing has basically just been hanging around at its lows. It's had a couple moves here and there. Otherwise, not really done much. You can see here, just on the weekly chart, just hanging out sideways. Fresh was another one that I tend to talk about, basing, but they haven't quite taken off yet. And then even there's some treacherousness out there. If you look at AI, AI's gotten a lot of attention, and it really looked good. It looked like this thing was going to be starting a brand new trend right here over the monthly 10. The 8 over the 21, like all this was looking pretty good. It's been having some pretty nice moves up. And then I forget which company came out, but they came out with a report saying that they have overstated their fundamentals, their financials. They're doing some clever accounting tricks to make their company look more profitable than they actually are. And so even though we had a perfect setup right here, right, it was really perfect. You can see price came right into the hourly 50, the Moxie indicator above 0, boom. Great trade. Now, from a technical standpoint, I would say, well, not too surprising because look at that. It was straight up. It was outside of the 30 ATR. It was very far from the 8 EMA, and it was just overbought. So, hey, pullback, not surprised. Now, the pullback happened because of the report that came out But there you go. That's kind of what's going on with this market. There's still a lot of challenges out there. Then I also see some names that are up, but they are going sideways. EXAS is one that kind of comes to mind. Do we know if this is going to keep moving up, or is something going to falter? We don't quite have an idea yet. It's really just going sideways. And you can see it has been dealing with the daily 50 for several weeks, and it's just not quite doing something. And so I'm looking at stuff like that. Mobileye, another one that's kind of on the list. You can see it's been holding trend line pretty well, and trying to hold the daily 50, but again, can't quite get any traction. Not quite going anyplace. Palantir, again, it's off the lows. Looks like it should be holding up, but just can't quite get anywhere. What's interesting is that the dips get bought, after a while, and so that's what we're wondering here is this going to be a dip that ends up getting bought? But it's just challenging when things are not actually moving very much and just kind of going sideways. Austin, so yeah, if you're talking about market would be 10 to 15% low if it wasn't for the top 5 names. Well, what you could do is look at RSP, or I think it was like EQQ or something like that. Look at the equal weight stuff. Maybe look at the indexes and look at their equal weights. And you can see that there's a little bit of a difference. And you can see the biggest thing that I was pointing out was here that the 8 is below the 21 on the weekly time frame for the equal weight S&P versus, look here, it's above. And so you can see that there's a bit of a difference. And so yeah, I've been trying to kind of look at the difference between, say, the equal weight and the regular and see if one is giving a little bit more of a clue. Like, yes, there's that statistic that says, hey, the market should be higher a year later. But you know what? A year is a very long time. And really, all it has to do is just be like here by next year, and there's a lot of stuff that can happen in between. So, while those statistics are fun, it's like, oh, we'll be higher. It doesn't mean we're in a rip-roaring bull market. It just means that it could go all the way down and come all the way back up, and as long as it ends like that before the end of that year period, that statistic works. So maybe it could be a little bit misleading to see how that goes, because we clearly know that, yes, the market is up, and technically the market is in a new bull category because it's how many percent off its lows? I forget. Yeah, like 15-20% off of its lows. So it's out of bear territory and technically in bull territory, but we also know if you look at it, that has been very challenging, very sideways. A lot of stuff, going around like that. Now, Austin, if we do look at the IWM, and unless the IWM really does fall over and make new lows, let me come over here to this time frame. I will just say that unless this time is different, and maybe it is, I don't have enough information yet, but what I can show you is each time that price really gets very oversold, it does tend to bounce and at least move up. And this seems like it's kind of the same situation. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind, and because otherwise, if you're playing this to the short, to the downside, then you think this is going to start to fall off like this and basically make new lows from here. Maybe. I don't have enough information at this point to be able to determine that. If I'm going to see that, then what I'll be looking for is I want to see price engage with the hourly 50 to the downside. I just can't tell right now. Right now it's not doing enough for me to say, oh yeah, it's going to go down. The hourly 50 is still actually angled up. So we don't have that yet. If we're going to be going down, we need to see this. We need to see price follow the hourly 50 down and follow the hourly 50 down like that. And we just don't quite have that yet. If anything, if this decides like it's oversold and does actually decide to move up, well, then you need to watch for the hourly 50 being in an uptrend, which it technically is. So for right now, I'm going to be have a little bit more deference to the long side than the short side, and kind of looking at this as far as a pullback. Yeah, thanks B1. Thanks. Yeah, I was only on the New York Stock Exchange and not the Nasdaq. Fair. But yeah, there are a lot of statistics that are still out there talking about things and saying, yeah, we're looking pretty good. So, but we're not seeing a ton of participation. Even China had some really strong moves for a while. Let me kind of clean that up. Don't need that. And you can see here that I've been looking at this pullback, trying to see if that pullback is going to eventually be into support and if it's going to continue moving up. And you can see here on the monthly chart, it is over the monthly 10, but the monthly 10 is still kind of angled down. So, that could be interesting. We'll have to see how that actually pans out. And then if we look here on the daily chart, again, looking for this pullback, which we were expecting, looking for that pullback. You can see here, price down, Moxie indicator up. There's the Moxie price trigger holding the hourly 50, and now we're trying to see if we have a trampoline move. And if that trampoline move works, then somewhere in here this will hold and we'll actually start getting price to get back up. If that doesn't work and this continues to go down, then I imagine the daily 50 will continue to be resistance and we'll continue to see price move down, however that's going to go. Yeah. All right. So let's see. ILMN. Yeah, Mark, this kind of goes to my point of where it looks like a lot of names are done going down and they're trying to base. And the question is, will these names eventually go higher or are they just going to go sideways for a long time? But yeah, basically there's your level. Notice that the 8 is over the 21. You have price over the 50. Now the 50 is still angled down. So, it's not totally perfect, but it is making progress. And you do have price over the monthly 10. This is a big difference than what we've seen in a year or two. I mean, you can see here that price got below the monthly 10. That confirmed the downside. And here we now have price over the monthly 10. So we'll have to see if that confirms it to the upside. But if we do look here, this has been a very challenging chart to try and trade. Very challenging. Now, perhaps if this is the beginning, then we're looking better. You do have the 50 over the 200, so that is much better than having the 50 below the 200. So that is a trend change. And we also have price right there testing the daily 50, and the Moxie indicator has been above zero this whole time. But there are some big pullbacks, some big drawdowns, and it can make holding on to some of these things pretty challenging. Yeah, Austin, man, everyone has been talking about that. Everyone, it's so funny. Is it? I've seen some of their shoes, but more like I've seen the hookah shoes. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it looks like hookah. The HOKA. Those shoes seem to be quite popular. But yeah, if we look at ON, and this thing had a really really nice setup, but it had an earnings trade. So that's what kept me out of it because I really don't like to trade earnings because you just never quite know. And if you look here, we had price below the daily 50, the Moxie indicator above zero, so that's a potential trampoline move. And then you see here we had price down, we had the Moxie indicator up, and then right there we had price over the hourly 50, and the Moxie indicator was basically crossing over zero. So that really, really lined up quite nicely for that earnings move. At this point, it seems like the cat's out of the bag. So yeah, I've been watching it. I've been looking for an area to get in. So far, nothing has really, created itself, mentioned it, worked out yet. And then going back to even ILMN and ARC and Palantir, all these kind of names, they're all setting up the same way. It's just a question of will they move? Because many of them are not quite moving. They are set up for potential, but not quite going. But you can see here, ON did exactly the same thing. You have the 8 over the 21, price over the 50, all that kind of stuff. And here you have price over the monthly 10, all that. But it's still, like this one worked. Okay, this one worked. Other ones are not. And that's our job is to try and figure out, okay, which ones are going to actually get going and pop and move and all that stuff. So yeah, we've been looking at that. I didn't, as I said, didn't want to chase it. If you were going to be going long on something like this, you pretty much had to just, jump on right there and trade it for a little bit. But the fact that it was so far outside of the the daily 30 ATR and off the 8 EMA basically just meant at some point this thing's going to get tired and it's going to come back down. And that's what it's doing now. I think it's Coming back down, we'll have to see where it comes down to, and if there will be a support area that we can find. It kind of reminds me of, I think it's NRDY or NRDS. Yeah. So like NRDS, same thing. Huge move. The only way you could play it is if you wanted to chase it for a few days right there. But again, you better realize that this thing is pretty overbought. And then you can see right there, there's the Moxie price trigger. So right on cue, absolutely right on cue. And then you can see, fairly big move down. Why? Well, because there was a really big gap between price and the daily 50. And it wanted to come back down and find some support. And since then, it still has not been able to find some support. So, Austin with ON, be careful with price all the way up here and most likely needing a pullback because you can see here, even the really big, strong names, they get overbought and then they get sold into. So yes, this thing might be a big name and big winner sometime in the future, but we have to find the right time. You can't just go buy it at the top. We have to wait for this thing to set up again. So that's kind of the same thing I'm looking at and thinking about for ON. All right, guys. Well, that's going to be it for me. Remember, if you're interested coming over here, you can check out the Moxie Indicator Mastery, the trading room that I have. We have lots of information in there. I'm on there a lot, giving alerts and lots of education talking about the market, seeing what we can do with it. And then, you can learn more about the Moxie Indicator. So thanks again, everybody, and we'll catch you around a little bit later.